Hey guys, this is Trey Estel, and I'm doing my final presentation on the relationship of zip codes and the population in the United States. And so I first started off by getting a database with all the zip codes in the United States, and here is the Fusion Tables map of all those of the georeference data. And I'm pretty much going to be using the main body of land for this presentation and not worry about Hawaii or Alaska. And so right now what you see is all the zip codes in a graph on Google Fusion Tables, and this graph shows that as the zip codes increase, the longitude decreases, meaning the higher the zip code, the more out west it is. And this is pretty good reference, and you can see that there's a whole lot more dots clustered up higher, meaning that there's more in the eastern part of the country. And this is just the same graph right now with a better visual that you can see, like the mountains and the peaks and all that. And so yeah, those two were my two Fusion table graphs of the whole database. And right now I'm going to show you what I did to put the database into Google Refine. I first imported the database into Google Refine, and it gave me 43,204 results for zip codes. And so I looked up in Google of what the most popular city in America was, and it came back as Greenville. And so I did a text facet on Greenville for the city column, and I had 54 matching results. So I figured that was a good chunk of data to represent in this, so I picked that and I exported it. And so now I I took the data with the Greenville zip codes, and I did a URL lookup for the distance from Lexington, Kentucky. Since we're at UK, right in the middle of Lexington, Kentucky, I figured it'd be a good reference spot for this, and it came back with a distance in miles. So we're going to use this here in a little bit to show you. I exported that and then imported it into Google Fusion Tables. This is what this is showing. This is the Fusion table of my data set. And then right now you can see the map of the georeference locations of these zip codes. And then this is just a graph of these particular Greenville zip codes, and it shows the distance from Lexington, and you can see that it's kind of in a V shape, and it's, to me, it's showing that Kentucky is towards the middle in the lower 44,000 zip code range. So this is interesting to see, and that's my Fusion table of the whole data set. This was my Google um, my Google tour, but it's too long right now for this presentation, and this is pretty much the overview of what it came down to be. And these are the distances of Greenville to Lexington, Kentucky, as you can see. And then I also made a UK sign in Google SketchUp and put it right in the middle of UK's campus, and this is what that looked like. And so I chose the I also did this earlier in an earlier module with the Georgetown zip code, and this is what this data set came out to be. And you can see both of those tours in my Prezi. I'm just not going to show them right now, but if you put both of these data sets together, well, first off, this is my Georgetown sign that I made and put in Georgetown's campus. I was just going to show that. But the interesting thing is, if you put both of these databases on the map together, you can see that they're very similar in where the clusters of the zip codes are in the states. And so going from that to a Google public data set, which this is attributed to right here, I pretty much got this chart, and it's pretty much a population growth chart. And in the end result, this is what the chart ends up looking like, and I've highlighted some of the main states that can represent like eastern and western part of the United States. And you can see that California is the highest, and it just goes on from there. This, however, is a chart from the Google Fusion table of all the Greenville zip codes and their distance to to Lexington, Kentucky. And what I found very interesting about this is if you flip this on the vertical axis like I did just now, and then relate it to the graph of the population, you can see that these two different graphs of two different things are extremely similar, which I found interesting, and I think it can help relate that zip codes and the population do in fact have a similarity, in which this map right here is from the public open database that I had earlier, but instead it's using circles on the map so the bigger the circle, the more population resides in that state. And you can see there's a whole lot more bigger circles on the eastern part of the country than there is on the western part of the country. And so remembering those two maps I showed you earlier, you can see that all three of these pictures are very similar in where all the clustering is. The eastern part of the country, and then some in California. And so this, to me, with all the zip codes and then all the population, where they're all clustered together with the most population, I can almost guarantee you that zip codes and population go hand in hand. And then I made a EpiCollect survey, and I had some friends over and I had them all take it, and this is the data that I got from them. And half of them believe that zip codes do not relate to the population whatsoever, and then half of them did. That's what this graph is showing right now. It's not really helpful, but it's still something. And so I think these three pictures of the population and the zip codes clustered and the distance to Lexington, Kentucky can clearly show that there is some resemblance of zip codes and the population. And I'm just touching on this subject now, and I think I have found something very interesting that I was glad I looked into. And that's what my final presentation is about. And that's about it. Thanks.